I wanted to ask you this with regards to your training, because we were talking
Yeah,
about how you approached it when you were competing. And you mentioned you trained
yeah,
6 days per week. You did two
yeah,
exercises per body part, but you did lots of sets, right? You noticed for you personally that the reps would actually increase from set to set, even after putting in what you felt was
yeah.
a lot of effort per set.
It doesn't make sense, does it? You would think
Well,
the more
yeah.
you were fatigued, the less you could do. You have to remember that when I said like say I took it over 5 sets, what I'm saying is every set I gave 100%. I always do. So I always go to failure. I go to my last rep.
You know what I wonder what it might be? If it's the fact that you worked in that mid range and you avoided the extremes of the motion. I wonder if
Yeah.
that has an influence of it because most people who are doing
Yes.
look, the reality is you're someone with tons of experience. If you're saying you're going to failure or close to failure, I mean, we're taking your word for it. It's not like you're a rookie, right? So
No.
I'm wondering now if it's the fact that you train in that mid range only or exclusively versus exploring the extremes. And I wonder if that would have had an influence on reps falling off from set to set.
No, I think you've nailed it. I think you've got
Yeah.
it. Yeah, I can agree with you on that. It's probably the way I was training. Maybe if I was doing a full range of movement, a complete full range, maybe it would have tailed off.
Right.
But I wouldn't know because I've never really, as I said, I have done full range, but I don't. I used to do the odd set here and there. The bulk of all my training that I've ever done has always been in that sweet spot, what I call the sweet spot.
And as far as how you would like to arrange the training, like if we're talking about a productive period where you felt, I'm really enjoying this. This is what it is. What did that look like? Was it, you mentioned you had like, I believe you said chest and back one day. Was it legs the next day, shoulders and arms,
That's right. Yeah,
the
I
Arnold,
used to do.
the Arnold split?
What did if I was doing a 6 day, for example, my split would be something like, if I can remember correctly, I used to do chest and back on a Monday, then I'd do quads on a Tuesday. So that would be like back squats and maybe a hack squat machine. Wednesday was calves and abdominals. So that would just be a standing calf raise and seated calves and a couple of different abdominal moves. Thursdays was shoulders and again back. Friday was always deadlifts. In fact, when I was doing deadlifts, that was kind of when I hit my kind of downward slope. I used to do a lot of ordinary deadlifts. If I had like 180 kilos, for example, I was doing like about 20 reps per set, and I do 5 or 6 sets like that. And I remember I was probably in my second or third set one day and I hit about the 5th rep and my hamstring went like a rubber band. And I was never the same after that. That was basically me done at the top. It took probably a couple of years for my hamstring to recover properly. And I
How old were
still
you?
couldn't do in my 40s. I can't think when. Probably later 40s, I would think. 48, 49 perhaps. And ever since then, I could only ever do Romanian deadlifts. So I was still doing deadlifts later on, but I could never do the traditional ordinary deadlift. And I just feared for my hamstring again. I could feel it, it was, but if I did it with a more straighter leg and I was taking out the movement from the knee joint, so most of the movement was the flexion from the hip, then my hamstring seemed to be okay. So I was still doing a variation.
Very interesting. What I wanted to say, so you had the deadlift day, and then after the deadlift day on day 6, what was it?
Yeah, I went back to calves again. I think I trained calves twice a week at the time, calves and abs.
So
Calves have always been my weak point. Thing is, with my structure, it was a bit off balance, which for me was great because I've always believed that this is about being unique and not uniform. And trouble with me is I had a massive back. My back was huge, which kind of unbalanced me a bit. So my calves were never great. So with a huge back and smaller calves, I was never the most pretty physique in the world. I was very rugged, but it made me unique.
that was a strong part for you, your back. What did you do specifically? So you did the deadlifts, you had the deadlift day. Was it deadlifts by itself, by the way? Was that like you went in only deadlifts? That was it.
Yeah, I think it was actually.
6 sets, like how you were mentioning before.
Yeah, it would have been 6 work sets. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a heavy duty workout still, especially with high effort, right?
Yeah.
On your actual, or I should say, on the day you also trained back, you had another day where you trained back, right? What did that include exactly? Because I'm curious.
Back training. Yeah, it was either a bent row with an easy bar, usually reverse grip like Dorian Yates used to do, or a single dumbbell off a bench, a dumbbell row. I used to do a lot of those, and just chin-ups, weighted chin-ups. I used to tie like about 40 or 50 kilos around my waist and then do about 6 sets with that.
So the sets pretty standard across most exercises, about 6 sets or so.
Yeah, generally.
And the rep range, what did you find that was most productive for you, given your style, like your unique approach with the mid-range, working with in the mid-ranges?
Yeah, my reps are always high. Again, it's dependent on what exercise I was doing. For example, if I was doing chin-ups, the rep range between, so I was doing 5 or 6 work sets, it could be anything between 11 and 20 reps. As I was saying earlier, my first set might be 11, and by the 5th set, I might have been doing 19, 20 reps.
And that's still with the same load strap to you?
Yes.
Okay. For the listeners, so they get an idea, right? Interesting.
Yeah.
Was that a common theme you saw across all exercises where you'd notice that the reps would increase? Yeah.
Pretty much. If I was doing, say, squats, for example, I used to do very, very high. But you got to remember that it was always mid-range movements, as we said earlier. So I used to get into like I was like a piston. I was going up and down, up and down. But I used to incorporate many different strategies within that set. So believe it or not, I used to take sets. One set, I could do 100 reps plus in one set. Honestly, I was doing stupid numbers. And in that, I could do lots of different, I could do rest pause, I could do very small reps, I could do fuller range. Sometimes I'd do a parallel squat within that. I used to juggle around within that set, but I used to do a lot of reps. Shoulder presses, for example, I used to do a really, really odd shoulder press. I used to use one dumbbell, build up to a 52 kilo dumbbell, and I used to have a bench set up, and I used to swing the dumbbell up as I fell into the bench. So I started with the dumbbell on the ground, and as I lifted it up to my shoulder, I used to fall into the bench. And as I fell in, I'd then push it up to extension. I could do anything to over 30 reps per set with a 52 kilo dumbbell, which actually is exceptionally difficult because you're lopsided. You've only got weight in one hand, and it takes immense effort to actually do that. I challenge anyone. If you use 2, you're balanced. If you use 1, it's amazing. And also there's a huge element of danger as well. Sometimes, it didn't happen that many times, but sometimes my feet used to give away, and then the weight I used to chuck it out to the side so it didn't land on my head, and I used to go flying.
Wow.
That's happened to me a few times.
I can only imagine.
That's just part of the things I've done. Remember, as I said right at the beginning, my training is not orthodox. It never has been. I made it up as I went. As I said, it was all about feel. I never went by the books. I never went by anything. I remember once, when I first started, I bought a book. It was by an author, Stuart McRobert, his name. And I can't, for the life of me, think of what the book's called now. But it was like a natural training book. And it was very, very basic. But I actually gleaned quite a bit of information from that book. It was basically structured on just basic free weight exercises, gradually building up the resistance, the intensity, and so on. He was also a stickler for doing very few exercises. And also, he didn't do many sets. That's part that I branched off on my own. But the thing that I did take from that book, I think it was called Brawn, actually, the book. What I did take from it was just a few exercises, very basic free weight, and that's what I built my program on.
I suppose that also had to do with the fact that that's all you had access to. You were working out in your garage, right?
Yeah, but it was because I wanted to.
Okay. That motivated you? Did that excite you?
Yeah. You see, bodybuilding for me is a very pure sport. I equate it to, do you remember the great masters of the martial arts? Back 100 years ago, people that I think his name was Yoshiba, and then there was Kano. I remember Kano was the founder of modern judo. Yoshiba was the founder of Aikido. Ever heard of Aikido? It's another martial art. But people like that, they were very humble men who built their lives. It was their passion around their martial art. I equate lifting weights to a kind of a martial art. It's a way. It's more than a sport. It's a way of life. And it is for me. It's a lot more than a sport for me.
I
It's
love
not a
that.
pastime. It's something that I just naturally just evolved into, basically.
You mentioned you trained 6 days per week, and was that the majority throughout the majority of your career? Did you ever experimented with less frequency? Because I know guys like who you never. What was the reason for that? Because I'm going to mention a few names who you're familiar with. I'm sure you got like Lee Williams, Ian Duckett. They tend to steer on the side of, again, heavier training, but less frequency,
Yeah,
and you tend to do more training frequency. Do you think
yeah.
that